Leigh.
Hello, Leigh. Well, I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome to Queer Gals Watch The West Wing. We're feeling emotionally vulnerable. I'm just going to forewarn the listener that I don't know what part of my cycle I'm in, but I cried doing the research for this episode today.
To be honest, it's a very emotional episode this week. And also, finally, a character that we have been gagging to meet.
She's finally arrived.
She's here.
It's FLOTUS. It is Rizzo as FLOTUS.
It's the greatest casting that I've ever seen. And I've got so much to say about it. So I hope you're ready for me to wax lyrical about the Bartletts.
Amazing.
As a duo.
Shall we dive into episode 7?
We should dive into episode 7. For those of you who might just be joining us for the first time listeners, hi, thanks so much. Please go back and listen to the last 6 episodes. Then you might kind of understand maybe some of the reasons why Leigh and I are so passionate about certain parts of this TV show.
Yes.
This week, we will be looking at episode 7 of season 1 of The West Wing, which is called The State Dinner.
And I was thrilled because from the DVD menu, we've both gotten the DVD box set. And from the DVD menu, I could see Bartlett in full glam. So I was already thrilled. I was excited to go.
Yeah, I mean, from the previous, I think it was 5 votes down when we were kind of like a banquet situation. We first saw the team in glam mode. And the idea of a whole episode surrounding being glam. Yeah, I'm here for it. Great. So at the outset, people are going to be looking great. And also, we're getting our first fix of FLOTUS.
There are worse things I could do. Rizzo herself. Stockard has arrived. We've been waiting 7
A special appearance
episodes.
by Stockard Channing. So, this episode, we open with CJ in a press briefing, but a press briefing like we haven't seen before because it's about everybody's outfits. And by everybody, I mean the women. And CJ is not enjoying herself. Leigh, would you like to do a dramatic reading of CJ's press briefing?
The First Lady will be wearing a Carmen Mark Valvo silver and black gown with a matching bolero jacket.
Shoes?
I believe she will be wearing shoes, yes.
CJ.
Black suede and velvet Manolo Blahnik slides with a rhinestone and mother of pearl buckle.
Accessories?
Gabrielle Sanchez freshwater pearl necklace with tourmaline beads. I am also told to inform you that she will be carrying a Christina Bamba silk pleated organza drawstring evening bag. Also, I did do some Googling of Manolo Blahnik period accurate shoes. And they are spenny. They are so spenny.
First season of Sex and the City, baby. Do you remember the episode all about Carrie wanting to buy the new pair of Manolo Blahniks?
Of course.
And then being like, I can't pay my rent if I buy them.
Inspired by Stockard, Mrs. Bartlett.
Mrs. Bartlett doesn't give a fuck about how much shoes cost. She's like, I want the ones with the mother of pearl toe buckle. From pure description, this sounds like one of the worst outfits I've ever heard of.
Yeah. The word bolero is very triggering. As someone who went to a lot of Irish weddings in the 90s and early noughts, the word bolero is deeply triggering.
Yeah, I don't like bolero jackets. I'm just like, wear a sleeved dress if you're going to be cold. I'm not a fan of a bolero, not a fan of a wrap.
Not a fan of what the Irish would call a stole. Did you have stoles in the UK?
I don't think so. We had a big pashmina phase though.
The stole is just a simple kind of rectangle of fabric that you drape over the arms, which is cut out of the same fabric as the gown.
Yes, I feel like that's kind of, it's pashmina adjacent.
Yes, but a pashmina is kind of like a woven fabric, whereas a stole would be like your matching chiffon or silk of your dress.
Okay, so cool. We will come back to this because I believe that Mandy has fallen victim to this.
Mandy has a stole. You're right, she does.
Now, we care more about the outfits that Stockard Channing and the president of Indonesia's wife are wearing, much more than CJ. CJ's very over it. She says that Mirabelle needed to know what wine was being served with the fish course. So good job, I went to school for 20 years. It's wine, you drink it.
Iconic.
And I actually think that the way that CJ is kind of regarding people's interest in fashion for this state dinner is quite similar in vibe to how I'm responding to people when they're asking me about my wedding.
Like, I still have a personality, guys. I'm still a strong, independent woman just because I'm getting married, guys.
Exactly. And also just like when people are like, so what are you thinking for this? I'm like, I don't know. There'll be flowers. Like, it will be nice. People will have food. Why are we, like, come on.
Absolutely.
So CJ is highly strung, to say the least. Perhaps not having the best day because she's not getting to talk about real news. And safe to say, Leigh, there's plenty of real news on the roster this week because there is a Hurricane Sarah, that is about to ravage part of the USA. Also, the Teamsters, which is a fun American word that we just don't use in the UK. Teamsters.
Yes.
Just truck drivers, right?
Yes, correct.
And the Teamsters are voting on whether or not they're going to go on strike.
Yes.
And then somewhere in Idaho, there is like a hostage situation.
Yes.
Where the FBI and is it tobacco and firearms?
Yes.
Are like trying to raid this kind of group that won't give up their weapons.
Yes. So, and I believe this is based on, do you remember the book that we both read during lockdown, the memoir called Educated by Tara Westover? I think it's coming from out of a similar community that she grew up in.
That's so interesting. An excellent book.
Please read Educated. It's absolutely fascinating. She was kept out of public school for most of her life due to her family kind of being basically in a cult. And she then went on to study in Cambridge and has written this incredible memoir about how she advocated for her own education. It's absolutely brilliant. But I think what they're talking about here is a very similar community to what Tara Westover came out of.
Yes. So we have some like really big juicy issues going on that's like bubbling underneath the state dinner. So very excited to see how this episode plans out. We start the episode classically with just Donna and Josh flirting.
Love it.
And I do think that kind of like the establishing corridor walk and talk with Josh and Donna is going to be a motif that we see a lot.
Absolutely.
However, much like CJ and her neck in episode 4, Donna's entire personality in this episode becomes her fixation with sorcerers in Indonesia.
Yeah.
So Josh needs a translator to do some business later on at the state dinner.
Some secret business with a secret little small meetup between him and Toby and Toby's Indonesian equivalent, kind of top aide to top aide.
And Donna is skeptical of this whole thing because, to quote her, in some parts of Indonesia, there are individuals who execute people on suspicion of sorcery.
I feel like this whole storyline is a disservice both to the Indonesian people and to Donna.
Thank you. Yeah, took the words out of my mouth. I don't know where Aaron's going with this, but Donna is so intelligent. And this is the running joke he gives her.
Yeah. Like, I find it fun when she's like our window for Josh to kind of talk us through more of the intricacies of how the West Wing actually operates. Like, that is extremely useful. And I love that function for her. But this just feels like she's just like a bit of a kooky girl who's out here reading fake news.
And if we dislike one thing, we dislike a man's interpretation of a kooky girl.
Truly.
We have a nice little team meeting where Leo is kind of giving us a briefing on all of our main plot points, which is a really super helpful framing device. Thank you, Aaron Sorkin, because it meant I could get all my notes down. What I did pull out of that is that Josh and Mandy are back on their shit again, kind of like getting at each other, bickering.
Basically, because they used to date, Josh doesn't like that Mandy's ideas are being heard in the workplace.
Yes, which we don't like. We don't like that as a personality trait for him. But also Mandy is just so dull. Yeah,
they just don't know what to do with her anymore, do they?
She's got no purpose, but I feel like they're trying to give her a storyline in this episode. But I don't know. At the moment, just she and Josh are squabbling actively in front of their boss, which seems very unprofessional.
And CJ is just kind of smirking throughout.
And I just wrote down in my notes, prediction, they will bang at the state dinner.
Which would trigger a fun pregnancy scare for Mandy, which would then devastate Donna.
This is what I'm here for. If we could just take some notes, people. Get some women in that writer's room.
Please.
I think we should touch on Bartlett and the president of Indonesia. Really funny scenes between these two. Jed has nothing to say to this man.
He just wants to be pals. He's really trying.
And I think that Jed Bartlett is someone who is used to like being able to kind of get on with anyone.
Yeah.
And the president of Indonesia is just giving him nothing.
Giving nothing back.
Nothing.
You have to imagine, like, if you're the leader of a country and you have these kind of enforced state visits for diplomatic purposes, and then you just, what if the other world leader just grinds your gears? Like, what if they're just a boring person?
And lots of people in politics are
we're
boring.
Great friends. Like, it's tough.
The only conversation they can have is that Bartlett just keeps saying, we're having salmon tonight. And then asking this guy if he likes salmon. And the guy's like, no, I don't like salmon. Which I find to be very funny.
Yeah.
But also I'm like, this is brutal. I'll touch in on the speech. So there's a speech going to be given at the state dinner, and Toby and Sam obviously are like key to writing the speech. But Sam's kind of leading on the speech because Toby's very preoccupied with his like secret liaison he's having.
Secret plans. Are they secret gay plans?
Leigh wrote this in all capitals in on it. Because he said, we got to see a guy about a thing. Maybe kissing. I will mention one thing about the Teamster strikes because it's actually a very boring storyline and I'm not very interested in it. Leo is kind of handling what I'm guessing are like the kind of the union bosses in a big meeting. And he just turns to this one guy and he's like, this is the White House, Bobby, not the Jersey Turnpike. Watch your mouth. Which I just think is a great put down. And then this guy just goes, forgive me. But again, Aaron Sorkin predicting the pandemic with
because Leo then goes, we're talking about fistfights in supermarkets for the last bar of soap. And I was like, yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, produce rotting in warehouses.
Yes, I remember it well.
However, then I was like, actually, the whole Teamster thing's just incredibly boring and I'm uninterested. Something that is more interesting, however, is the Idaho hostage situation. I think this is a great storyline. And like I said earlier, it's giving Mandy something. I think there's like a vain hope that it's going to give her some sort of like character development.
Because she's essentially looking at it from a PR perspective. And she's saying, we don't want to go in all guns blazing into this holdup where there are these survivalists. And then we end up with, because there's children inside, with women running out of the building holding babies. That's not going to be good.
And she's like with FBI windbreakers in the background, like that.
Exactly.
And I kind of love that for her as like.
I love that for her being like, let's do the de-escalation tactic first. So she wants to send in an FBI negotiator. And so actually, like I think my instinct would be the same as Mandy's.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all of this scene is undercut by heavily emotional music, which makes me think that everything will go wrong.
It's all gonna go wrong.
I'm going to go back to more awkwardness with the president of Indonesia. Leigh described their relationship as just like that awkward project partner at school who...
Yeah, like when you get like matched up with someone for like a social studies project and you're like, oh God, I've been stuck with the world's most boring person.
And Bartlett's like, do you think this guy is boring or rude? And Leigh, I would like to ask you the same question. Is he boring or rude?
I think he's fun when he likes you. I just think he hates Bartlett.
Yeah, fair. Bartlett also said something outrageous, which was when he said he couldn't believe that president had won an election. His comment was, oh, we normally rig those elections.
Dear God. It's not comfy. It's not a comfy vibe for me.
Don't feel great about it. And Jed also says he doesn't want to sit with him at dinner, which is, you know, when you're a teenager at Christmas and you have to sort of sit with like an estranged cousin at like some sort of like fold up table in the corner. It's sort of giving that kind of energy where you're like, do I have to sit next to them? Like, I don't know them that well. And obviously we would all want to be sat with like CJ and Josh and Toby.
Yeah.
So if you were at the state dinner, Leigh, who would you like to have sat at your table?
I would obviously like to be sat in between CJ and Toby.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I think Toby would be a very trying person to be sat next to.
No, because the grumpy people are always the best for the cutting comments. Like you could just sit and kind of peruse the people watching with Toby as he just absolutely cut people to shreds.
Yeah.
And then CJ would just like work the room. So you could have the best of both worlds.
I think I would definitely choose CJ, but I would be more inclined to choose potentially Josh, just because I quite enjoy sitting next to people who, like, deep down you're like, I don't really care for you. But you're like a fascinating creature.
Yes.
And the way that you see the world and the way that you think people see you is fascinating. So like, tell me more about that woman across the room who you are convinced is in love with you.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to live in the fantasy world that you believe is real.
Please take me into a deep dive of your girl drama. I'm just going to sit here and sip my wine.
Exactly. Because wine is for what? For drinking. Anyway, conjecture aside, we get a key plot point, which is Hurricane Sarah, which is due to just hit the Georgia coast, would be hitting like a US fleet, basically.
Yeah.
And so they have made the call to move said fleet away from the coast and out of the path of the hurricane. And so Leah's like, just in case anyone asks you, Jed, like, this is the plan.
Standard operating procedure.
Toby is being very Toby today in this episode. He's very grumpy and like very sour. And he's got a bee in his bonnet about Indonesia. And he's making the speech really mean.
Sam offers a version of the speech where it's like, our good friends for 50 years, and he takes issue with the idea of calling Indonesia America's friend.
Because it was previously under a dictatorship.
Correct.
Which obviously the States was probably involved in selling, let's face it, probably guns too. But just Toby is, instead of helping Sam, just says, wow, that was the worst writing I've ever heard.
Which I kind of love. Because he actually leaves quite a big pause. So he goes, wow, that was the worst writing I've ever heard. Which I love that it kind of leads Sam down the garden path of thinking that he's done a good job.
Yeah, and I think it's important for Sam to be humbled in this episode, which you'll find out why, because he really grates on me as this goes on. Another plot point that we come back to that was sort of hinted at a few episodes before was the relationship between CJ and the journalist, whose name is Danny, who came to her previously saying that he knew Sam was dating Laurie.
Yes. Now, this is very confusing because he is both like not a sexy man, but has the banter far above his pay grade. Like,
Like,
would
not
I
attractive.
prefer CJ to have like a hot lesbian love interest? Of course, it's what she deserves. But if it's going to be a kind of mediocre man, this man is bringing his absolute A game, and I can do nothing but respect it.
Also, Danny is a hot name.
Yeah.
Like, I think a fully grown human that's pulling off Danny. Kind of love that.
Yeah.
Also, his game is very much like taking the piss out of CJ. And I mean, you and I, we love that.
Can fall prey. Yeah.
So CJ's doing a little press conference and he basically bugs her about this protest that's going on, which is kind of about colonial silver. It's really not a big deal, but he kind of gets under her skin about it. And she says to him, "You're a rabble rouser. You rouse rabbles," which is just not cool, which makes me think that they're going to bang.
Yeah. Because right now he's just like a kind of annoying fly, kind of buzzing around her. But at some point she's going to snap her little fist around him.
Much like Obama in that little video. Grabs that fly. Oh, hot under the collar. The last kind of parting line that Danny gives us, which again, he has no right to pull off, is he just looks at her and goes, "What are you wearing tonight?" Like, imagine if a woman said that to you, Leigh, that you were having like a bit of banter with.
I would be on the floor, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah.
I would no longer be able to stand. I would be...
She would have swooned.
I
She would have
gone
swooned.
down. Like a pageant queen. I would just be like, like a pageant queen receiving my crown.
Immediate loss of consciousness. We finally see Laurie again.
Amazing. It's
this
lovely to have her
episode.
back.
She's such a good character and she's written so well and all of her dialogue is really great. The only problem is that every scene she's in, Sam is also in, being a little bitch.
Yeah, I don't know what's in it for her in this relationship with Sam. I really don't.
And I do feel like that's kind of the point that they are making, because we find them, they're in a diner having lunch together. Sam is just talking about himself and Laurie is actively trying to study for an exam at law school.
Yes, he's just monologuing and she's like, please, like, I need to learn this.
Just dump him.
Yeah, and then he basically explains the thing that she's trying to study to her in like extremely rapid fire.
Oh, which is so helpful.
And then she
so
says,
helpful when you're trying to learn
just like
something.
recites it back to her. And then she says, thank you for that display of geek bravado.
She's so good. She's good.
She's so good. But then Sam, to top it all off, as if he wasn't an annoying little pest as it was, he then reaches across the table for her sandwich, not his own, her sandwich, and eats. If somebody did that to me, it would be over. That is a dumpable offence.
Yeah, we need to have decided before ordering if there's sharing. This isn't something to spring upon me mid-meal.
No.
I would respond badly to that. You know me, I'm a Virgo. I love to control
We're
things.
both earth signs at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, I don't like change. Important to note that Laurie is seeing a client tonight, and therefore I 1,000% think she will be at the state dinner.
Yeah, because they make a specific point of her being like, well, I never know where they're going to take me. They just tell me what to wear.
Exactly. So I'm like, well, they're going to take you to the state dinner, and then Sam's going to be a little bitch again.
Yeah.
More on that later. We have a little check-in with Mandy and Josh again regarding the Idaho hostages. Just like Mandy doubling down on the idea that she thinks that they need to have a negotiator rather than going in and trying to like gun for gun take the building, which I think is a very useful kind of storyline for Mandy. And the actress is doing a really honourable job here. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I don't know who Mandy is.
Yeah, they really have lost their way with that character. And I don't mean that as a slander on the actor at all. I think she's brilliant. I just think they're not really giving her much to do.
And she has this like great back and forth with these other characters in this scene where she's like, no, you know, we need to, like, this is going to be a PR nightmare. Like, we need to send in a negotiator. And then Leo just turns to Josh and says, Josh, what do you think? And Josh says, this ain't going to end good.
Yeah, he doesn't have like an alternative plan.
And at that point, I did scream aloud because I was just like, okay, fine. Okay, we're going to give this woman, this female character, this really great scene and give her a platform to like put forward her political opinion. But then before we accept it, we're going to turn to
her ex-boyfriend. And his response is like, huh? I don't know. But I don't like her plan. That's the one thing I do. Like, go home.
Oh, just both of you, just stop it. Stop it.
But President Bartlett decides to go with Mandy's plan.
Yeah, which I do think is a nice moment. The other thing that I think is nice is her trouser suit and little gold earrings.
It's phenom. It's phenom. It's lovely to finally see her in trousers. It's lovely to see her in just a very simple kind of fuchsia shirt. It's beautiful.
Lovely colour on her. And the perm has relaxed.
It has chilled
a little
out.
bit.
Yeah.
So finally it's time for us to start the state dinner, and we get a lovely moment with like Donna tying Josh's like bow tie.
Very, very intimate.
I would say that's very romantic.
Agreed.
This whole little moment that they're having though is completely undercut by Donna continuing to chat about this fucking sorcerer shit.
Yes, yeah.
And I love that every episode there's a bit like CJ's neck. Mm-hmm. Obviously there's like a running salmon-based joke through this episode as well, which I do enjoy. This, however, I don't like. And I feel like at the read-through, they would have known it wasn't landing. Why did they keep it in?
But did it land
down.
in the 90s? This is my question. It just feels insulting to both Indonesia and women.
We have the briefest of moments with Charlie because his grandparents live in Georgia, and basically he's like, can I have some help getting them to a hurricane shelter?
But he's also like, I'm so sorry to ask, but I've not been able to get through to my grandparents. And I'm like, rescue mission for Charlie's granny and granddad. We are a go. I'm sobbing.
And that's the thing is I was like, okay, so this is going to be the main human interest thing for the hurricane.
Mm-hmm. Little did we know.
Little did we know. Let's do a brief moment where we talk about everyone's outfits for the state dinner because
it's
there
important.
is stuff to discuss. I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, Lee, but I think Josh looks terrible in like a dinner suit. I think he looks awful.
His better look is, he definitely looks a lot better in the kind of like rugged, like rolled up shirt sleeves, like coffee in hand, like slightly rumpled, like that's who he is. Whereas Sam Seaborn is born to be in a tux.
Yeah, like he's wearing that tux, whereas I feel like the tux is wearing Josh.
Agreed. He suits,
and it doesn't fit very well. It's like loose, like it's just not. It's badly.
The 90s were the era of the boxy suit, sadly for men. But then I do have a very serious question to ask, which is, what did the actor playing Mandy do to the costume designer? What happened there? What was the drama? Because every single formal occasion, CJ looks flawless.
Yeah.
And Mandy, in this case, is in an insane mustard paisley gown with a stole. That is madness.
It's awful and it doesn't fit her well and the material doesn't, all round really bad. And yeah, I mean to mention CJ's outfit, she's wearing this like charcoal grey silk evening gown. Does it cut her really annoyingly like on the ankle, which I don't like? Yes.
Very triggering for you as a tall woman.
Thank you to tall women everywhere.
Yeah, just the ankles are out when they don't need to be. But the neckline is flawless.
Yeah, and she looks great. And also she's got her back out. And again,
I love a woman with her back out.
We saw it in the black and white number for the previous banquet. The woman's got a great back.
Yeah, she does.
And she does also have a good neck. We can discuss in person FLOTUS's outfit as well. It's more attractive than the description, that's for sure.
Definitely. Although Stockard does have one of the most insane 90s blow dries I've ever seen. Like the height that fringe is reaching.
It is giving mob wife. And I just can't get over the idea of like, I'm so excited right now because in my mind, I'm like Rizzo. It's the
Rizzo
same
is
character.
FLOTUS. It's Rizzo Bartlett. And she has not come to play. She walks in and immediately her entering line is, "Nice threads, girl," to CJ. Wild. From the First Lady of the United States.
Yeah, and then she introduces CJ immediately to a young doctor and says, she's not married, Stephen, and she doesn't have a boyfriend.
Obsessed.
Mob wife.
Obsessed.
Just with this crazy blow dry and this like bejeweled cocktail dress. Like the bolero is the same material as the cocktail dress. And she's just like, everyone calls her ma'am.
Yeah.
And I just love her. She has this really flirtatious moment with Leo where she says, "Is that Leo McGarry or Fred Astaire? Come on."
Obsessed.
Get a grip. Why have you been keeping this from us for so long? Why was she not there when like all of these moments were like Jed's being insane and like what we needed was for his insanity to be matched by his wife?
Yes.
Anyway, we called it, Lee. So Leo needs the boys to do some schmoozing with a donor, someone who's doing like quite a lot for the party.
Who is played by your man from Succession.
Is he from Succession?
Yes.
So we were like, is this someone that Miranda or Carrie or someone sleeps with in Sex and the City?
He really looks like the guy that Miranda sleeps with when she's pregnant.
Yes,
her like a final fling before she's showing. But that's not him. But he is in Succession.
He's in Succession.
And then I was like,
he's also in like other White House oriented shows. So he's in Madame Secretary and Veep.
Yeah.
So I love that it's kind of a character that he brings back. However, his date, surprise, surprise,
is Laurie.
It's Laurie.
In a stunning gown.
She looks crazy hot, like crazy hot.
It's beautiful, like a scoop neck, sparkling, bejeweled. It's kind of like light silver on the top and it goes into a gradient, into a kind of charcoal. Stunning.
She looks incredible. Obviously, immediately Sam is just vile. and is like, sorry, what was your name? Yeah, I'm Sam Seaborn. Get a grip. Get a grip.
Either accept what she does for a living or get out of her life.
This is the thing, is that he keeps on saying, he said it in the diner, he's like, I hate your night job. I hate your night job. Date someone else then, Sam.
Yeah, literally.
That's part of her life. It's putting her through college. She's chosen to do sex work and she's allowed to.
She enjoys it.
Yeah, she enjoys it. And also, like, maybe she's allowed to make her own decisions.
Yeah.
You're not even officially her boyfriend. It's a no from me. Some updates. Charlie's grandparents are safe.
Alas, the ships.
The ships, Leigh. 12,000 men.
Directly, the hurricane has changed course and they are now directly at sea in the path of the hurricane.
So we have moved them
directly into the path of danger. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, really bad.
Really bad. 12,000 Navy men.
And Leo's like, this is the thing, like, this is the type of drama I love, which is like, that could be a whole episode.
Yeah.
But Leo's just got to like grab Bartlett by the elbow and be like, we need to just like get dinner over with. Also, we find out that the Idaho siege is over.
Yes.
And actually the negotiator was shot and is in critical condition.
Yeah.
And I do feel for Mandy because she kind of didn't deserve her plan to go so badly.
What I did appreciate was her immediate response to hearing that was, I'm going to throw up. And I was like, you know what, actually,
that would be mine too.
This is a really great moment of character development for you, of like a professional decision that you've made has had a really profound impact on somebody else. And you're fully feeling the impact of that. Like, I think that's really interesting to explore in terms of like a White House staffer's journey through their career. And I love that she's allowed to have that depth for but a moment.
For just a single second. I also love, this is the first time I think I see Bartlett where I'm like, yes, I would vote for you.
Yeah.
Leo takes him off to like brief him about the ships and also about the Idaho thing. And he like takes on the information so well about the guy that's in hospital. And there's no shouting or pettiness. It's just like, he's just like, yeah, I'm the president of the United States and I will handle this. And the rain is falling on the window panes and the thunder is rolling.
It's giving string quartet on the sinking Titanic vibes.
Yes, yes it is.
Because everyone's in the tuxes. They're playing a kind of jaunty tune, the strings.
And death is imminent
And death
at
is
sea.
imminent at sea. Yeah.
Yeah. We should touch on Josh and Toby's little secret boys meeting, which unfortunately isn't about kissing.
I was so upset when it wasn't a gay hookup.
I know, imagine. I would love that for Toby Siegler.
He is kind of like a lifelong bachelor vibe. So like, who knows?
Eyebrows.
Who knows?
Who knows? It turns out that, so this aide that they're meeting with, there's a whole kind of long running joke, right, about finding the right translator, which is kind of funny, but I think maybe like 2001 funny.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, if you're hosting the Indonesian president, why would you not be aware of how many languages are spoken in that country?
Yeah.
And how have we not, you know, Donna's being told to like run around finding all of this. Like, if it's your business,
if it's your secret
important
meeting,
to you should be doing the research yourself.
Yeah.
So they're ending up with this like train of like 3 different interpreters between Toby and this dude. Turns out the dude can actually speak English.
so everything's fine.
Ha 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 ha. But the backstory of this moment is fantastic, which is Toby's friend is in an Indonesian prison. He's a French citizen who I think is involved in kind of like freedom of speech and like promoting protest in different countries. So Toby wants this presidential aide to do like a full under the table wink wink favor and be like, open the door of the prison, put this dude in a car, drive him to the border, like kind of basically like, how much do you want us to pay?
Yeah.
Like, let's just, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Which I kind of didn't expect for Toby to like be like a rule breaker in that way.
I'm also so intrigued about who this friend is, what the backstory is, why Toby like is so impassioned about getting him out of prison.
His gay lover.
His French ex. I would be obsessed.
Just the one man in France that he was just like, they had like he had like a heady semester abroad.
Yes. Yes. Just in Paris, in the 70s.
Just like bottle, like carafes of wine and cigarettes and just like hooking up in some like garret somewhere.
And it was the one time Toby Ziegler ever felt free. And now he's trying to get the love of his life out of Indonesian prison.
I actually feel very compelled by that.
I feel extremely compelled by that.
What we do get from this presidential aide is an unbelievable comeback.
Yeah.
He says, I think you have a lot of nerve. That was a despicable and humiliating speech your president made tonight. And I know that you were the one who wrote it. You humiliated my president tonight for no other reason than to show off. And now you want me to do you a favor? Go to hell.
Stunning.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Because America loves to pass moral judgment on every other country. They absolutely love it.
And that's the thing is that, the speech that Toby wrote kind of was erring on the side of like, it's quite shady.
Yeah.
It was quite shady towards Indonesia. Mm-hmm. And the point that this presidential aide makes is like, I'm sorry, so you can sit there, a country that was built on the genocide of Native Americans.
Yeah.
And lecture us.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, hun.
Yeah.
Really fun, really spicy little scene there.
Loved it.
Should we just circle back to Sam Seaborn and how much of a despicable asshole he is?
This was a new low, even for Sam.
This is one of my most hated moments and it's going to be difficult for him to come back from this for me.
It's going to be extremely difficult for him to come back. First of all, he's eating like a madman.
He's eating a salad with aggression I have never seen before. Just like stabbing at bits of iceberg lettuce, just like furious. And Carl comes over with Laurie, who's going as Brittany. It's her working name. And Carl's like, hey, it was just want to say it was like really great to meet you. I'd love for us to work together sometime. And Sam just like looks him in the eye and says, I cost $500 an hour.
And Laurie essentially chokes on air, understandably.
And then Sam's like, oh yeah, like my resources, like that's how much I charge. Like he's ratting her out.
Yeah.
And then Carl's like, oh, I see a friend over there. I'm going to head off. And Laurie deals with Sam with great decorum.
What a lady.
She says, I'm sorry, Sam, but this isn't exactly any of your business. And Leigh, is she correct?
She is correct.
She is correct. Enter Stockard Channing. Again, just like full Rizzo. She's just like, who's this gorgeous girl? And they have this like really lovely moment where like Laurie gets to meet someone who she has great admiration for. She's having this amazing moment where she's getting to meet the First Lady of the United States.
And the First Lady turns around to her and is like, you, my friend, are adorable. And you can just see that like for Laurie, that's like so exciting and she's so excited about it. And Sam just immediately shits on it.
He just like is sat like a grumpy little boy at his table. And you can like, there's this like beaming smile all over Laurie's face. And Sam looks up at her.
And he's upset because she introduced herself as Brittany and not Laurie.
Yeah. He looks at her and says, I'll give you $10,000 not to go home with him.
Again, just like reducing her value as a human being so much down to what she does. It's just disgusting.
And now forever, the moment that she meets FLOTUS will be connected with the toxic guy that you're seeing being like, well, I guess you're just going to go and be a whore.
It's grim.
And yeah, and I don't know, Leigh. It's going to be hard for Sam to bring it back for me.
Yeah.
But let's recover from the stress of Sam Seaborn and go back to FLOTUS and POTUS. They're a hot couple.
Yeah, much like Charlie in a previous episode, poor Ms. Bartlett has been running around for the entire episode looking for her husband.
But like really good naturedly, like she's like, oh, he's probably off just, like being the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
And then they like find each other and like they have this like little embrace and like little like moment in like a door frame and it's like really fit.
They have really hot chemistry.
It's brilliant casting. Like they look like a couple and they also look like a couple that like could run a presidential campaign.
Yeah. And I just love the way that it's not even like sexual, but just the way that they touch each other. I completely believe they've been married for like 30 years.
It's very the Obamas.
Oh, yes.
Which is like, there's no like PDA or anything, but it's just like the way in which Barack Obama, like, always just with like a look or with his body language would just be like, and now Michelle's talking and all of my attention is on her.
I'm gonna cry.
I know, I love them so much.
So beautiful. I don't know why that got me.
Oh.
He just loves his wife so much.
Lee's officially
Moving on.
Sorry, what part of your cycle did you think you were having?
I don't know. I have an IUD. I've not had a period in years.
I think my conclusion is I would have voted Bartlett probably quite a lot because of FLOTUS.
Yeah.
Like, I just think, like, they're messy. They're crazy. I love them. Like,
I just feel like in my mind, they like met in college and they like hosted all the fun parties and like they got drunk together and it was really fun.
And like they'd just be like knocking back, like, I don't know, like knocking back whiskeys at the end of the night and just like getting a bit like, well, Mrs. Bartlett, I guess it's time for me to take you home. Like, I just think that that's them, and I love it. I love it. This episode had the most intense closer.
Yeah.
Now we know that Aaron Sorkin loves an emotional closing point for an episode.
He loves an emotional closing point and then cut off.
Yeah. However, I would say that this is on a new level.
Yeah.
So the state banquet is over. That's done. Like, everyone's kind of like now focusing on Hurricane Sarah and this like fleet that is in the center of the hurricane. We're trying to get the fleet commander on the radio so that the president can like talk like man to man and be like, look, I'm behind you as your president, kind of moral support moment. However, the only people they can talk to is this like tiny little maintenance boat and this like young man who's just like...
Did they say he's a corporal 3rd class?
Yeah, he's just like manning the radio. This man's name is Harold.
Yeah.
And he's injured and his radio keeps cutting out. Yeah. And just like President Bartlett's just like on the radio to him, comforting him.
And he calls him son.
Yeah. And at this point I was crying.
Yeah. I'm crying now.
And I, in my notes, just put, this is America and this is what a president is for.
Yeah. You know what? Like, I wouldn't be against talking to Joe Biden in my dying moments. I think he'd be very supportive.
Like, I think maybe that's like a kind of like a point of quality that you need to think about when you're voting for a president is like, in my dying moments, if the phone were to ring and this person was on the end going, you know what, Leigh, you've done a good job here.
Oh, God.
Like, would that bring you comfort? And I think all Americans should think about this when they go to vote.
Correct.
Yeah, but this, like, we all know that he's going to die at sea. It's very traumatic. And the way that Harold keeps calling him sir. And then, like, in the background of the shot, like, Stockard Channing's just got, like, one hand on Jed's shoulder.
He says, I'm going to stay on the line for as long as the radio works.
Yeah, that I let out a sob in that moment. And like Josh is like holding Mandy in the background. Like everyone's just gathered around. Like there's just a single lamp.
Yeah.
And the rain is falling. Yeah. And the thunder is rolling.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends and immediately the theme tune cut in, which is overly cheerful. And I needed to sit in my feelings.
Yeah. Fully.
Just to be like affronted by the reflection of my own face.
Yeah.
Tear stained. In the TV was brutal.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Monsieur Sorkin.
Yeah.
You really got me. You really got me with that one.
You've done it again, you little bastard. I think that's one of my favourite episodes so far. It's my favourite episode to date. Let's just run through some quick fire questions because I've talked about this episode for long enough. Best fashion, Leigh.
I'm going to have to give it to FLOTUS's blow dry for sheer volume.
My best fashion moment was just, it's a toss up between CJ's ball gown and FLOTUS's like bejeweled cocktail dress. I'm going to go with FLOTUS because I'm upset about CJ's ball gown being too short.
Yes. Oh, no, actually, also I do need to add Laurie's gown because that was one of the most stunning gowns I've ever seen.
I think it would have looked amazing on you.
I think that actually is going to be my winner, is Laurie's gown.
Yeah. Okay, understood. What could a British or Irish politician just never get away with?
Bartlett, we didn't mention this, but Bartlett walks into the union negotiations with the Teamsters, and his opening line is, "I have a Nobel Prize in economics."
Yeah, that's ballsy, isn't it?
It's big dick energy. I'm not sure if I like it. But it's a level of bravado that an English or an Irish politician would simply never get away with.
No, because we'd just be like, all right, mate. Jesus.
Yeah.
Mine is, I think, comforting someone who's about to die at sea.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to speak to Rishi Sunak in that situation.
Yeah, I would actively throw myself overboard. I'd be like, wow, this can't get any worse. The thing is, Leigh, I don't think I'm joking.
No, I don't. I just don't disagree.
I think I would need to be alone with my thoughts in those moments.
Yeah,
I wouldn't need just thinking it would be good for us to no, just send me to the bottom of the ocean. I'm done.
Now, whereas if Barack were to call,
oh my God, yeah, I'd be like, I needed this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. If Michelle were to call, if Hillary were to call, not Bill, but Hillary.
Just Bill in the background. You're doing good, kid. So big ticket items on our bingo card list. Obviously, guns with our hostage situation.
Yeah.
Also, kind of like we did touch once again on just like the kind of blood-soaked history of most countries on the globe.
Yeah.
And you know, America being like, guess we're not blameless in this, which was quite good. And again, Aaron Sorkin just flirting with feminism by making CJ upset that people wanted to talk about clothes, and Mandy trying to have a voice, but it not quite working out.
Just to circle back, that storyline could have so easily been Josh suggesting something and it going wrong, and Mandy coming in with the successful plan. And yet we chose to give Mandy, the female character, the plan that fails.
And if anyone needs a plan to fail in order to have growth, one might argue Josh.
Agreed.
Man, I feel like a man, Leigh.
I'll give you 10,000 not to go home with him tonight.
Yeah.
It's bleak. But also I would like to give honourable mention to Josh walking in and saying to Mandy, "I look good, don't I?" And then turning to Sam and saying, "We look good, don't we?"
Yeah, I mean,
it's really fun.
That's the kind of masculine
I really enjoy
energy.
Boys enjoying their fashion.
Yeah, I love that for them. I love the kind of like, oh, like we look fancy in our ties. What I don't love is like, I'll give you 10,000 not to go home with him tonight.
It's the two sides of the coin.
And what was the moment that made you proudest to be an American?
I'm going to go ahead and say that this made me proudest that an American wrote this line, because it feels important. And it also made me proud to be an Indonesian, though I'm not in any way an Indonesian, which is when the top Indonesian aide says, "Mr. Ziegler, does it strike you as at all hypocritical that a people who systematically wiped out a century's worth of Native Americans should lecture the world so earnestly on human rights?" And then Toby Ziegler responds, "Yes, it does." No notes.
Yeah, no notes.
No
Great
notes.
stuff. Great stuff, Aaron. I think my moment that like got me in the American feels where I was like about to burst into the American national anthem was Harold, I'm going to stay here for as long as the radio works, okay?
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Exactly. So Leigh, now that we have delved in depth to the state dinner and met finally the hero, the icon, the legend, FLOTUS.
Yes.
Would you like to take us into our study section?
Yes, we are going to discuss today, what does FLOTUS even do? For those of who are not au fait with the acronym, FLOTUS stands for First Lady of the United States. And thus far it has exclusively been First Ladies. We've not had a First Gentleman thus far. We do obviously have a current Second Gentleman in Kamala Harris's husband. But the role of First Lady has never been like officially kind of defined as to what her duties were. Obviously, Martha Washington created the role. Although she was not referred to as the First Lady, she was just referred to as Lady Washington.
Oh, I kind of love that.
I love that. She began the role, which started off mainly as the kind of presidential hostess. She's kind of in charge of the social affairs, which was referred to under Martha Washington as the Republican Court, and it allowed elite women to meet each other and have the opportunity to play a backstage role in politics by influencing their various men, which is extremely fun.
It's really fun. Please bring me that TV series.
100%. 100%. And then since the kind of early 20th century, the First Lady has been assisted by her own staff. So a kind of mirror image of the roles that we see in the West Wing, except it's in the East Wing of the White House, which is also fun.
Again, give me that TV show.
Exactly. Obviously, we have had some presidents who have had to do without a FLOTUS because they've been either single or widowed. The only bachelor president was President James Buchanan.
Absolute lad.
Absolute lad. The fact that he was a lifelong bachelor has led some historians to question his sexual orientation. And he is kind of blamed with failing to prevent the Civil War, which is not great.
That does feel like a lot that we're putting at his door.
He kind of didn't really see the issue between the North and the South as being that much of an issue.
Probably because he was too busy kissing boys.
Potentially, yes. And he had his niece, Harriet Lane, kind of be his de facto First Lady. And she was actually the first person who was ever officially referred to as First Lady while she was organising and hosting at the White House on behalf of her uncle.
Again, give me that TV series.
Extremely fun. We did also have some widowers who were presidents. Thomas Jefferson had been a widower for 19 years when he entered the White House, and he relied on Dolly Madison, the wife of his Secretary of State, as well as his oldest surviving daughter, Patsy, to host state functions. Dolly Madison, I think, was kind of an incredible lady, and she popularized the First Ladyship by engaging in efforts to assist orphans and women. And she was also the kind of first fashion icon of a FLOTUS, because she dressed really elegantly and got a lot of newspaper coverage because of that. She also risked her life to save iconic treasures in the War of 1812. I want to know more about that story, but that is something that Dolly Madison did, which is very fun.
Not enough people call Dolly these days.
Precisely. And then most FLOTUSes post Dolly Madison, despite the fact that she wasn't Thomas Jefferson's wife, kind of modeled themselves on her.
So she was the trendsetter, really.
Precisely. We do have a slightly more controversial FLOTUS with Rachel Robards, who was Andrew Jackson's wife. Although when they got married, she was under the impression that her ex-husband or estranged husband had filed for divorce. Unfortunately, he had not, meaning that Rachel had accidentally committed bigamy.
Committed bigamy. So good. Imagine just hating your spouse so much that you're just not entirely aware of if you've got divorced.
Precisely. And so they then did have to get remarried properly 3 years later. And actually the public attacks on her because of this sent her into a deep depression, which was horrible. And sadly, she actually died of a massive heart attack just before, a month before her husband took office. So she was never actually First Lady.
Gutted.
Yes.
Sorry, not to undermine someone dying of a massive heart attack.
Yeah, also there's President Van Buren, who I had never heard of, who his wife is described as dying probably from tuberculosis, but apparently no one is sure. And he then moved into the White House as a widower with 4 bachelor sons, and he kind of didn't have a regular FLOTUS until his oldest son got married. To a relative of Dolly Madison. Which is very fun. So then Angelica served as his First Lady, as his daughter-in-law.
I wanted to sing the line from Hamilton, but I'm tone deaf, so I will not.
Now we get into some tough stuff here in that President Tyler, His wife was the first FLOTUS to ever die in office. She had ill health before she came into office. And for a while, the FLOTUS duties were taken over by their daughter-in-law, Priscilla. But then Letitia died, sadly, in office. And the American public were then informed that President Tyler, a 54-year-old man, had remarried Julia Gardner, who was 24 years old.
Oh no.
Which is kind of grim. Even in the 1840s, people were like, a 30-year age gap? Really?
Especially when you've already got kids. Like, I imagine back then it's like, oh, but I need to have like an heir for my estate.
She was the same age as Priscilla, his daughter-in-law.
That's a no from me.
Yeah, absolutely. And she was referred to as the Rose of Long Island. She was like the star of the debutante season that
almost
year.
makes it worse.
It makes it worse.
She's like a prize like animal that he's bought. Disgusting.
But also she's not she's not great herself. In that she loved being FLOTUS. Like, she loved it so much. She's quoted as saying, "Nothing appears to delight the president more than to hear people sing my praises."
Oh my God. Okay, so she's just like an awful person.
Yeah. They then, after his presidency, moved to his plantation, where she was a vocal supporter of slavery.
Okay, there it is.
There it is. And even volunteered for the Confederacy when she was living as a refugee in New York.
Yeah.
It's not good.
It's not a good look from her.
No. The defeat of the Confederacy, obviously her husband was 30 years older than her, so he'd already died at this point. The defeat of the Confederacy was not a great day for Julia. And she then petitioned for a federal law to provide presidential widows with a pension, because she was at this point impoverished, because obviously the Confederacy had fallen.
Because she was a racist who'd never worked a day in her life.
Correct. So she then did get a state pension for the rest of her life.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because you don't really think about the role of FLOTUS outside of like maybe the last 60 or 70 years. Really. Like, kind of, like, I wouldn't be able to tell you who FLOTUS was like during the First World War.
Yeah. And actually Woodrow Wilson's, which we'll get to, Woodrow Wilson, who was the president in the First World War, his wife died in 1914.
Oh, rough
time for Woodrow. But yes, so because of, they didn't actually have like an official law to give FLOTUS a pension until later, but it was decided after she petitioned that Mrs. Garfield, Mrs. Lincoln, Mrs. Polk and Mrs. Tyler would all get some money from the government. And so yes, basically any president who didn't have a wife for whatever reason, most of them widowed, obviously, other than our lovely friend, Mr. Buchanan, but most of them either had a friend or relative play the role of FLOTUS, or just remarried to a much younger woman. That kind of seems to be the general vibe.
So I was under the impression that the role of FLOTUS was like an honorary title, like did a bit of philanthropy, like go places to do pictures. But actually, like some FLOTUSes have kind of done a lot more and been more active, like sometimes for good, sometimes for bad.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to kind of get into now, because I'm going to get into some of the more historically recent FLOTUSes.
The Nancy Reagans of it all.
We're literally about to go to Nancy Reagan. Yes, how did you know? How did you know that's where we were headed to Nancy?
Because she's a slippery little snake, Nancy Reagan.
She is a slippery... She's a terrifying woman. She's terrifying.
A terrifying, intelligent woman with a dumb husband. There is no more powerful combo.
Yeah, so basically, the role of FLOTUS kind of up until the 20th century was just like social... very important socially, right? Because if, like in this episode, if you're hosting a state visit, the First Lady and her equivalent from the other country, they kind of create social ties. Obviously, all of the hosting of the really important dinners and things like that is done by the First Lady. And then from the kind of 20th century onwards, the FLOTUS often would pick up a particular cause that she was passionate about. Usually that was kind of quite politically uncontroversial for her to kind of champion. Now, Nancy Reagan was an actress with MGM. And in 1949, when she met Ronald, she is quoted as saying in some promotional material for MGM that her greatest ambition was to have a successful, happy marriage. Which, like, hun, we move. You've got to do what you've got to do. You've got to say what you've got to say, not to, like, anger the boys. But she then said, in retrospect, I was never really a career woman, but became one only because I hadn't found the man I wanted to marry. I couldn't sit around and do nothing, so I became an actress.
She's insane. Also, like, it's the vibe is very much like trad wife, isn't it? Like all that, like trad wife promotional.
And even her
stuff.
casting when she was an actress, she was often kind of typecast as like loyal housewife. She met Ronald Reagan in 1949 because he was president of the Screen Actors Guild at the time, and her name had appeared on the Hollywood blacklist. And so she...
What did she do?
Well,
what did she do?
She sought Reagan's help to maintain her employment as a Guild actress, and trying to get her name taken off of the blacklist. And Reagan informed her that she had been confused with another actress of the same name.
I'm
but
so
that's how they
upset
met.
by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had already been married, so she became stepmother to his like 2 kids, and then they had a kid of their own. And over the 8 years, so she was basically FLOTUS for the whole of the 80s. And during that time, she hosted 56 state dinners, and she's quoted as saying, "Hosting the dinners is the easiest thing in the world. You don't have to do anything, just have a good time and do a little business. That's the way Washington works." Which made me think,
to live in Nancy's world.
Which makes me think, you know who would be an excellent FLOTUS? Just hosting. Fiona Kingwell.
You know what? Like, she loves to host.
You're
the lighting's always on
at
point.
Event management.
Yeah.
I think a large portion of FLOTUS's role is in fact event management.
Yeah, and I would thrive.
Yeah.
I really would. I think that I would also be really great at kind of like running some staff.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just like hiring the right people for the right job.
Yeah. And she was apparently really involved in picking Reagan's staff appointments. So helping him decide who was going to work in the West Wing. They had an incredibly close relationship to the detriment of their relationship with all of their kids. There have been various estrangements with all of the kids just because they were kind of so obsessed with each other that it all got a bit tempestuous with their own children. But White House staff found Mrs. Reagan quite demanding.
Really? She seems so laid back.
She seems so chilled. She also came under criticism because she decided that the White House needed a new China service and spent in the 1980s $209,000 for the new White House China service, which was ordered at a time when the nation was in the worst economic depression since the Great Depression.
I was about to say, like, it's a really wild time to be like actively splashing cash on something that's like not necessary.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It was also at a time when her husband was trying to say that school lunch regulations should allow that ketchup be counted as a vegetable.
You know, we wonder why, like, boomers are the way they are.
Yeah.
But, like,
yeah.
I mean, I suppose, you know, we've navigated pandemics. They navigated ketchup trying to be classed as a vegetable, you know, potato.
Also, remember we were talking about FLOTUS's Ouija board in a previous episode?
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, and remember how we were also talking about how the gun control regulation was called the Brady Bill because Reagan's press secretary got shot in an attempted assassination on him. These two things converge. From the time of the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, Mrs. Reagan worked his entire presidential schedule around the thoughts and ideas of her astrologer and would make changes to his schedule based off of what the planets were doing.
Oh my God.
Without his knowledge.
Oh my God, and it was secret from him.
private lines were set up between the White House and Camp David so that private phone calls could happen multiple times a day between Nancy Reagan and her astrologer, Joan Quigley, in California. And Joan Quigley was paid $3,000 a month for her work.
I was about to say, I was like, that astrologer is making bank.
Correct.
Making absolute bank.
Needless to say, Ronald Reagan's White House chief of staff was not thrilled at this at this setup. And it created a lot of friction between him and Nancy as the first lady.
Yeah. That tracks.
Yeah, because President Reagan wanted to address the Iran-Contra affair in early 1987 via press conference. This is what the chief of staff wanted to happen. But the first lady refused to allow him to do this because she didn't want him to overexert himself due to a recent prostate surgery and astrological warnings. This caused the chief of staff to get so incensed that he hung up on her. And the president was so infuriated that his chief of staff hung up on his wife that he then got fired.
Oh my God.
Yeah. In his memoir, the chief of staff wrote, "Virtually every major move and decision the Reagans made during my time of White House chief of staff was cleared in advance with a woman in San Francisco who drew up horoscopes to make certain the planets were in favorable alignment for the enterprise."
I am floored by this because to my outside eye that doesn't really know much, like the White House and American politics in general, like take themselves very seriously, understandably. Mm-hmm. They're running a country. So I love when it just all boils down to some fucking insane, like the craziest, this woman in San Francisco is just like sat in her apartment with like a private phone line, just like drawing up astrology sheets
Joan
for
Quigley
the first lady.
Volunteered for the Reagan campaign in 1980 because she was so impressed by his astrological chart. I'm just obsessed with her. I also want that TV series. Like, I want the TV series about the life of Joan Quigley, astrologer to the First Lady.
Yes.
But obviously, Nancy Reagan is also famous for the Just Say No campaign, war on drugs. Mm-hmm. And there's a video in the documentary, The Program, which just came out on Netflix, that shows Nancy Reagan and Princess Diana sitting there and listening as parents are encouraged to kind of shout at their kids and say, because this is the whole like tough love approach that was really championed by the war on drugs. A mother is shouting at her daughter saying, "I'm really disgusted with you. You're really selfish and arrogant. That's how I feel about you. I love you." In like a crowded conference room. It's just crazy. Basically, the Just Say No campaign really contributed to a lot of the horrible rehabilitation camps and schools that kids were sent to, teenagers were sent to in the 80s and 90s in America. And it was bad. Like, it was really bad.
Yeah, it's a child abuse.
Absolutely. Which is kind of spawned the kinds of organizations that like Paris Hilton was sent to as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have the response to HIV/AIDS, in that there wasn't one really. A new stamp was about to be made in the last couple of years with Nancy Reagan's official portrait on it in honor of the centenary of her birth, and members of the LGBTQ plus community referred to it as a slap in the face when it was unveiled, because Nancy Reagan, as an MGM movie star, was close friends with Rock Hudson, and he asked for help in receiving AIDS treatment in a French military hospital, and Nancy Reagan declined to get involved.
Yeah.
And that was like her close friend. It took Ronald Reagan until 1985 to directly address the issue when answering a reporter's question. And it was 2 more years before in 1987, he finally made a major address on the AIDS crisis. Jill Biden was also criticized because she was there for the unveiling of this stamp honoring Nancy Reagan, and Michael LaRosa, who's the press secretary to the First Lady, made a statement saying President Biden and the First Lady have a long and proud record of supporting, fighting for and leading on LGBTQ plus rights and those living with HIV/AIDS. But all around, just really upsetting, horrible.
Yeah, I think the thing that modern politics could in the UK, and I probably don't want to speak for the Irish. Don't want to speak for the Irish. And maybe in America is look back on things that we've done and be like, wow, we didn't handle that well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time we kind of put the past up on this pedestal, and we either have to be like, oh, we absolutely deplore that decision that was made, or we just pretend it was fine. And there's this fear of the middle ground, right? There's the fear of going, yeah, like I can understand why it was politically dangerous as a Republican to be supportive at that time. But we have to understand
but even to privately help your close personal friend who's dying of AIDS, I just think is horrific.
Well, it's deplorable, but we need to be able to look back on that and be like, well, it wasn't handled right.
No.
You know, and that's not about going, well, Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan should like burn in hell forever.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. But there should be like, well, that's not the stamp that we choose. Let's have a look at the optics there. The optics are bad.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe that. And like, Dr. Jill is a smart woman.
Yeah.
And she must have known the optics were bad on that.
Yeah. We will come back to, I think, other FLOTUSes as we go on, and their contribution. Obviously, we have Michelle Obama striking an absolute contrast here because she was an early supporter of LGBTQ plus rights. And she was one of the most consistent advocates for same-sex marriage to Barack Obama. And she's quoted as saying, this is what made me cry when I was doing the research earlier. This is an important issue for millions of Americans. And for Barack and me, it really comes down to the values of fairness and equality we want to pass down to our girls. These are basic values that kids learn at a very young age and that we encourage them to apply in all areas of their lives. And in a country where we teach children that everyone is equal under the law, discriminate against same-sex couples just isn't right. It's as simple as that. Queen.
She's so classy. Like, she's just a classy woman. I could wax lyrical about Michelle Obama all day, every day, just because I think she's an incredible human. And I love the way that she speaks. I love whoever she writes her speeches, whoever she...
You know that Melania Trump got done for plagiarizing one of Michelle Obama's speeches.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, you know when you're like in the absolute parade of fuckery that was the Trump administration, the fact that just became like the tiniest problem just puts into relief everything else. We should talk about Melania in depth at some point.
Yeah. I also obviously want to go into Hillary. We're going to discuss Hillary in depth at some stage, don't you worry, because she's a fascinating woman.
Leigh, did you once try and write a one-woman show about Hillary Clinton?
Of course I did.
Leigh bought an outfit from a charity.
God, I forgot about
She bought an outfit from a charity shop, from like a thrift store, which was very Hillary Clinton, and just inspired by this outfit was like, I shall write a play.
Naturally. Has anything ever been more 22 years old? No. But then I was so hard on the Hillary hype in 2016. And then when she lost and Trump gained office, I just had to step away. I was like, I can't look at this. But yeah, that was our kind of intro to FLOTUS. But we're going to have more FLOTUS content to come. Don't worry.
Good. I think it's such a meaty role. And I feel like we vote for the president, right? But I think it makes sense to think about what especially as now we're in this, not to sound like an ancient old crone, but like because we're in such a social media driven society. And actually, like, you know, FLOTUS has a Twitter account and like an Instagram account and stuff. It's like, actually, this person has a huge amount of impact on the general public and the American public.
And also, like, it really matters that, you know, we might diminish the role of like being a hostess or like being in charge of the social affairs, but that can have a really significant impact on relationships between countries when you're the first lady of a nation, because it's important that people like you and you can talk to people. Yeah. Like, it's really important.
Yeah. And so I think that it will be really interesting to like look into this more, especially as in The West Wing, they kind of really have this like tight-knit relationship between Jed Bartlett and his wife and the role
Which
that
I
she's
think
playing.
is a really fascinating choice, given that this is like the year after the Monica Lewinsky scandal that we're in. I think that's a really interesting choice to just like have our POTUS and FLOTUS just be an absolute like team.
Really, really tightly joined at the hip. Shall we discuss our predictions, Leigh?
Yeah.
What would you like to see?
I'd love to see some more FLOTUS content. I would love to have some more Charlie in the next episode. This was kind of a Charlie light episode.
Yeah.
I'd love to see FLOTUS and Zoe together in a scene.
Yeah. Stockard Channing and Elizabeth Moss just like in an incredible scene, potentially where Martin Sheen is just like being outrageous. Like a full family, like a Bartlett family scene.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
Something I'd like, because it doesn't feel really like we're doing this. We rarely sit with one story for more than an episode. I know this is something I've mentioned before.
Yeah.
But I'd really love like some follow through. Like the hurricane thing is a big deal.
Yeah.
And like that loss of life. I really hope that in episode 8, we've got some kind of like aftermath of that.
I know. I feel like the show kind of discards so much because I also really do want to know about Toby Ziegler and his friend in the Indonesian prison. Like I want to know more
lover,
about that.
Friend,
potential love of his life.
I'd like to know more about that. And also the thing, my only point that I'll raise is it does make it difficult for me to know how much time's passed because we're not like, oh, well, you know, last month we passed that bill, or like, oh, you know, it was only a week ago that we met with Hoynes about this. I don't know where in the administration we are. Like, I don't know how much time has passed. Could be a week, could be 6 months. So that's my note.
Yeah. How long has Laurie actually been putting up with Sam?
Yeah, like
is this like a 2-week fling at this point, or have they been dating for like 6 months?
Yeah, because my level of anger is very much reliant on knowing that fact.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this again next week then.
Perfect. Please do follow us at Queer Gals Watch the West Wing on Facebook, Instagram. We're not really doing much on X because ew.
Yeah.
But please do follow us. Also, please, if you're enjoying spending time with us, please do just like tell your friends to give it a listen. Because that also really helps. And we also will have, hopefully, by the time you're actually listening to this episode, we will have our Patreon sorted so that you can support us. But we will have more details on that very, very soon.
Lots of fun little bits for you guys on there. And obviously, like, it means the world that any of you might be listening. And so, yeah, just hop on and see if anything takes your fancy. Feel free to get in touch via any of our social media outlets or our Gmail to send over any questions that you might have for Leigh that I can just chime in on.
We are queergalswatch@gmail.com. Please do send your stupid questions in of things you don't understand but you're scared to ask your pretentious friends.
Exactly. Okay, Leigh. Well, I guess that's us.
Love ya, hon.
I look good, don't I? We look good, don't we?
We do.
We do. See you next time.